Joining us now on Can I Media is Dr. Todd Conklin. You're from the U.S. Tell us why you're up here talking.
They invited me, so it's quite an honor to be invited. And I think the Inform meeting is really exciting because it's big. There's lots of people. It's industry specific, so there's lots of good reasons to come up here. Plus, it's in Banff. I mean, give me a reason why you wouldn't come up.
I've got nothing.
I mean, nothing at all. It's a beautiful day, so that's good.
So you're up here talking about safety.
Right.
And human performance when it comes to it. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so I really represent a different side of safety, although I should say I don't think it's that different anymore, where we really look at the relationship between the worker and the work they're set up to do. We believe that if you focus entirely on worker behavior, all you're going to fix is worker behavior, and lots of times you leave these really horrific potentials in the system that are just waiting for the next guy to come along and screw up. If you focus entirely on process, it's good, but it tends to be kind of an engineering worldview, so it loses some of its holistic nature that human beings bring to the system. But if you look at both sides of that, or really the relationship between those, you start getting a much better understanding of how to make robust, reliable, resilient systems.
Is that something that's necessary because the way people think today is a little bit different than, say, it may have been 30 or 40 years ago?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know if people think differently today. I think the complexity in the work they do is different, and I think the way we investigate failure has changed. And so because we investigate so many more events, and we do it, I guess if there's a good use of the word aggressively, we look deep into systems, that I think there's a tendency to really go back and look for the point where the worker made a mistake. The problem with that is that even in success, there's a point where the worker made a mistake. So I think it's not so much that people are changing. I think we're changing our understanding of how people interface with work.
One of the things that you pointed out I thought was interesting, you looked at the 3 stages of an incident and the context, what happens before the accident happens, the consequence, and then I guess looking at it afterwards to see what went wrong. You said the consequence is the least consequential out of those 3.
Yeah.
Why is that? Yeah.
Isn't that funny? Well, I think it does 2 things. One is that's from this new book I wrote called The Pre-Accident Investigation, and there's a big discussion on that. Consequence is just a matter of physics. If a guy gets his hand cut off, there was something sharp, something slipped, and something fell against something hard, and there was a hand in there, right? We tend to favor consequence because it's so dramatic, but in fact I think what's interesting is the context, what the worker saw, and then the retrospect, what the organization saw. And the problem with organizations is they're so much smarter than the worker because they know the ending. The worker doesn't know how this story is going to end. They're just writing the story. But by the time the company gets it, the ending's already been written, and you go back and look at it. I sort of make my living saying this phrase: everything is obvious once it happens. The problem is that obviousness bias we have doesn't exist for the worker.
Okay. When you also, I mean, you're here talking to oil professionals. How is the oil industry when it comes to safety?
Pretty good. I mean, they'll never rest, and they won't stop until they've all reached zero. In fact, they won't stop in the oil industry until people are better after they come to work than when they came in. But it's such complex work, and it has such small tolerance for failure that when things happen bad, they're bad things. So when you take complexity and increase it, you know you're going to have more opportunity for failure because failure is directly linked to complexity. I mean, the people who fail the most are the people who do the most work. Then when you add complexity with no tolerance for failure, which is where these guys live pretty much right in the middle of it, you know you're going to have failure and you know it's going to have consequence, and it can't really surprise us. That's kind of where we are.
You compared the oil industry to the auto industry.
Yeah.
You said the auto industry expects failure, and that's how it gears its product. Oil industry, not quite as much.
Yeah, in fact, the problem that the oil industry has, I think, and that's my challenge to these guys today, is that what the oil industry expects is perfection. And so they're not as good as defending against sort of predictable, logical failure.
And when we say the auto industry expects failure, we're talking about collisions and driver error, that sort of thing.
Car wrecks.
Yeah.
And what they try to manage is consequence. And if you look at cars, there's been a huge change in cars. I mean, I think we're really close. In the next 4 or 5 years, every car will have a backup camera. Every car. If you buy a Honda this year, every Honda has a backup camera in it. Well, that backup camera is really interesting because it's a direct defense towards a blind spot that everybody knows they have. And everybody should walk around their vehicle before they back out. The problem is that for the most part, when you back your car out, you don't hit anything. And the more times you don't hit anything, the less need you have to walk around your vehicle and make sure nothing's behind you. So you're surprised by that. So one of the ways we can do that is we can put a defenses. It's really simple. A screen. I like the ones where the rear view mirror turns into a little TV because it forces you to have a different awareness to the potential hazard that you're about to encounter, or hopefully not encounter.
If you had the delegates from your session here leave with anything today, what would you want them to leave with?
Ask how, not why.
Explain that for us.
How is a really good question. It's a force functioning that makes you look out from the event at the system. Why is a good question, but it force functions you to look from the event into the worker. Why has long served us in safety, and I think a good safety professional uses why to ask how. The problem is that as an organization, we tend to focus on the very, very curious whys and not the more complex and difficult hows. How's a much better question. How something failed gets you to a different outcome than why something failed.
Okay. You know what? I thought that was going to be the last question, but I have another one for you.
No, sorry.
We're done? You got to go, eh? You know what? You were talking about the differences, the percentages of accidents between the skilled worker, the new start. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's the Rasmussen model. That's a hard model to talk about, but I'd invite the guys that are watching this to look it up. It's Jens Rasmussen, and it basically says that there are 3 performance modes. The most reliable is a worker who's done the job a bunch of times and is inattentive. But they're super reliable because they hardly ever fail. The middle one is this notion of rule-based. They're less reliable than a skill-based worker, and then knowledge-based. But for this interview, that's a 25-minute discussion. For this interview, look it up. It's maybe the best tool we have. It certainly helps us a lot.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was fun.
Yeah, we've been chatting with Todd Conklin here on Can I Media.